They were also both sentenced to the maximum term, that is 25 years for Green and 25 years for Rodriguez. And then for the attempted murder of the 11-year-old or the 8-year-old girl, they were both sentenced to 25 years on top of the other sentences. So with respect to Daniel Rodriguez on the Ebeling murder and attempted murders, Mr. Rodriguez's aggregate sentence is 75 to life. Now, Ernest Green, his aggregate sentence on that murder and attempted murder case was also 75 to life, but he was also involved and convicted of a separate case involving 2 additional homicides. A month after the Ebeling homicides, Ernest Green, with 3 completely different people, went into a home on Merrimack Avenue and did a second home invasion. That's in the city of Buffalo, in South Buffalo. They did a home invasion. 4 people were involved in that crime. The 3 people on that case, 2 people on that case went to trial. That was Ernest Green again, and his co-defendant on that trial was a guy by the name of Wayne Robbins. And they were convicted back on April 3rd, the same date of the jury on the same case, as the Ebeling case found them guilty of the crimes on Merrimack Avenue. They murdered Bethany Malloy and Shaquille St. John. And for those crimes, they were both sentenced as follows. On the 4th count of the indictment, murder in the 1st degree, Ernest Green and Wayne Robbins were sentenced to life without parole, both of them receiving that same sentence. On the 2nd count, murder in the 1st degree for the second victim. So the first one was with respect to Bethany Malloy. The second one was with respect to Shaquille St. John, and they were also sentenced to life without parole. Both Green and Robbins got life without parole. The 3rd count of the indictment with respect to that crime, Bethany Malloy was the victim. That is murder in the 2nd degree, and Ernest Green got 25 to life for that crime, and so did Wayne Robbins, 25 to life. For the 2nd count with respect to that, that would be the 3rd count. Sorry, there's a lot of counts here, but for the second murder in the 2nd degree charge involving the death of Shaquille St. John, Green and Robbins also got 25 to life. And with respect to the 2 additional counts, the felony murders, Green and Robbins got 25 to life. On each count, let me just sum it up by saying, on each count, Judge Bowler did exactly what he should have done. He maxed them out. He gave the maximum sentences to Green and Rodriguez for the Ebeling murder and the 2 attempted murders. And with respect to Green and Robbins on Merrimack, he maxed them out on each count. So in sum, Ernest Green is going to be serving life without parole plus consecutive 75 to life. So the life without parole is for the murder in the 1st degree counts on Merrimack, and the 75 to life is for the crimes on Ebeling, which was the murder of Danielle Curtacci and the attempted murder of her 2 little girls. Daniel Rodriguez is getting 75 to life for his involvement in those crimes, the murder and the attempted murder of those 2 girls on Ebeling. And Wayne Robbins is getting life without parole for the 2 murders that occurred on Merrimack. So that's the conclusion of the sentencing phase of this trial. We are here with you to let the public know what occurred here. And I want to take the opportunity to say, there were about 40 family members in here of all 3 of the families that were involved just, shortly before all of you coming in and joining us. And they were extremely, extremely pleased with the outcome. They were very happy with the maximum sentences being given out by the judge. Obviously, this is a horrible case for all of these families, and they're going to be living with the pain for a number of years. But this is what justice looks like, and this is the best we can do for them. We give them some sort of closure, even though they're going to be dealing with the emotional pain. And these 2 little girls who sat there on the couch next to their mom while these 2 men shot and killed their mom right in front of them, shot her in the back of the head. They are never going to see the light of day, and that's justice as best as we can deliver it here. So I want to take a minute to just tell you a little bit, because this case is almost 5 years old. There were a lot of people involved in this, and I think this is the best of, the best that we have in Erie County in terms of public servants. This these sentences are really the conclusion of an unrelenting investigation led by our three lawyers here. Ryan Haggerty was the lead attorney on this case. Chris Safuco, all of whom are standing up here with me, and Sam King are the other two lawyers. They put a tremendous amount of time and effort into this case right from the very beginning. And this was not an easy case to solve. We couldn't have done it without all of our law enforcement partners. I'm standing up here with the chief from the town of Tonawanda, Chief Stauffinger, and Chief Macy from the city of Buffalo, and also Detective Jeff Campanella and the assistant chief from the town of Tonawanda. And the amount of work that went into this case and just the sheer determination to not let go of this investigation is really, really, something that I'm proud of. I'm proud to work with all of these folks. But, specifically, I want to mention from the town of Tonawanda, Detective Jeff Campanella, who is retired now, I understand, but did an incredible amount of work to solve the Ebeling case, which then led us also to solving the Merrimack case. And police officer Robert Kubis, who I don't think is here, but he was also integral from the town of Tonawanda in solving this case. From the Buffalo Police Department, as I indicated, Chief Macy is here, but there are two homicide detectives by the name of Scott Malik and Mark White, who we work with every day on a lot of different kinds of cases, and they were the principal detectives and helped us solve the Merrimack shooting. In addition to them, there was a police officer from the Buffalo Police Department by the name of Ion Baker, who provided a significant amount of evidence that helped us in both cases. We also had help from not just those two police agencies, but from the Secret Service Agency. The special agents involved in the investigation from the Secret Service were Michael Hamilton and Emily Granruth. They played a significant role. There were literally mountains of evidence in this case. The digital evidence that we had in this case included, cell phone location data, license plate readers, videos, body cam footage from the Ebeling homicide, which was critical in this case, and on top of that, we had a lot of different witnesses. In addition to the Secret Service, we had help from another federal agency. The FBI agents involved was Special Agent John Orlando, who deserves to be recognized here. And it's funny because I said earlier in my office, I know none of these officers want to be, they probably don't want to be recognized or identified, but the amount of people that were involved in this investigation is truly impressive, and I think it's important to recognize them. Special Agent Tim Fudella and Jason Bernhardt, who worked for the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, they were involved in helping conduct interviews and in helping us distill down the location data that comes from the cell phones that were discovered that helped us solve this case. And finally, we had a number of investigators and support staff from our office in the Erie County District Attorney's Office. Investigator Sal Valvo, Investigator Jay Mayhook, Investigator Chris Lalka, Investigator Mike Wright, and Investigator Bobby Yates, all of whom are retired police officers from various agencies. But they did a tremendous amount of work. And finally, I want to mention Nicole Hoffa. I don't think she's here in the room, but Nicole Hoffa and Kim Rapp, two of our victim witness advocates, did an incredible amount of work. There were two little girls here who lost their mother, and they ended up being able to be witnesses for us in this trial. And it was critical to be able to handle them with the care needed. And Nicole has an incredible ability to deal with people in the most horrific circumstances that they've gone through. And these two little girls were brave enough with the help of our office to come to court and testify. So, and I wanted to make sure that I took the opportunity to recognize all the different people that were involved, and so that the public knows exactly how much work goes into these kinds of cases, and the strength of our relationships and the ability for us to collaborate. I can't say enough how impressed I am with all of the people involved. And specifically, I can tell you because I worked firsthand with the lawyers involved in this case, and they were just unyielding in their determination and their doggedness in making sure that we solved this case. It was a year after the Ebeling homicide before we were able to move forward with completing the investigation with the grand jury. And they never let go of the investigation. And we're finally here today, and I'm proud of all of the different people that I mentioned here today and all of our partners in law enforcement. So this is a good day. These men are never going to be able to hurt anybody else. And the families in these cases, they feel some sense of justice because the judge made sure that these 3 men are never going to get out of jail. So that's all I have. If there are any questions for anybody, police officers are here, and my lawyers, if you want to get into any of the specifics of the case or the trial.
How critical was it to have the 2 daughters of Danielle Kurtachi testify in order to put away those 2 men that were there that night?
I think it was really critical. I'm sure the testimony was compelling for the jury, but you know what? I want to have my lead attorney on the case, Ryan Haggerty, answer that question specifically.
It was very important for 2 reasons. One, we had important evidence they were able to offer about the identity of the perpetrators. They weren't able to say, that it was Danny Rodriguez and Ernest Green, but they gave physical descriptions that were very important, that were consistent with the defendants, and they're also able to distinguish the conduct between the 2 people. So we were very certain that it was Ernest Green who fired the shots. It was also very important for the jury to kind of vicariously experience that horrible evening. They're sitting here watching the girls in the immediate aftermath on body camera, and they're also hearing firsthand the horror of what they experienced. So it was very important, not just from the proof, but so that the jury understands this is a real thing that happened. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around something so horrifying, but this was a real thing that happened to real people.
Do you know how Danielle's 2 daughters are doing today?
They're doing well. They are doing well. They, as well as one could hope. They are in school. They are active, and they are, as best they can, moving on.
And they were both here for the sentencing this morning.
How old are they now? 5 years old.
They are 16 and 13.
Can you explain what made it murder first degree?
So there's a couple different ways that you can establish a murder in the first degree. This one was under a theory that there were 2 or more deaths caused in the same criminal transaction. So criminal transaction has its own definition, but it is what it sounds like. So in this case, where it would have been an intentional murder as a murder second for each individual victim, because it was in the same transaction, that elevates it to a murder first. And that's what made them eligible for the life without parole.
Can we just review one more time Rodriguez, Robbins, and Green's relation to the victims in these 2 cases?
Sure. So one of the other important pieces of evidence that we had, and Jeff Campanella can tell you, on the morning of August 27th, we didn't have anything. We had a horrifying situation and no leads. One of the first things that we had was a phone number written on a Post-it note that was conspicuously left on Danielle's nightstand. And Jeff Campanella sees it and that's unusual. I think the business term is a clue. So we looked at that number, ran it, came back to Danny Rodriguez. Turns out Danny Rodriguez was also actively communicating with Danielle about 20 minutes before the murder through Facebook Messenger. So Danny, we believe, had a relationship with Danielle Kurtachi. Danny and Ernest Green have known each other for a very long time, and they've been charged with a similar crime like this before. So it seems like this was just what it appeared to be a crime of opportunity to get $30,000 in an insurance settlement.
It was $30,000 for Ebling, and then $90,000 they had assumed was on its way to Merrimack. Is that correct?
Correct. So Danielle Kurtachi accepted the workers' compensation settlement, and she converted it into cash. Her attorney testified, and we had those records. Bethany Malloy had approved of a personal injury settlement, but had not yet received it. But in our investigation and talking to people in her orbit, she was talking about it the way that a lot of us would, like, oh, I got that settlement. And you use that colloquially, and people understand that to mean I have it, where what she really meant is I've approved of it.
And so that's how you guys led that. They must have known them in some way if they're knows enough that she got the settlement, right?
Correct. So I'm sorry, to loop back to your question, Bethany Malloy, Shaquille St. John were in the same kind of close-knit friend group as Wayne Robbins, Cherie Bailey, and Marquise White. And so we know from talking to people in that orbit that similarly Bethany Malloy was talking about her settlement, and it was kind of out there that she was coming into money. Chris found some communications in Wayne Robbins' Facebook where he's communicating with someone else and says something to the effect of, we're going to get someone who just got a settlement. So
safe to say these three guys were after money.
yes, and it's also, as some of our comments reflected, they were preying on people who counted these defendants as friends, and it was they did not suspect for a moment that they would betray them in this way, and let alone for money.
Could you, or maybe any of you, just explain the legwork that went into connecting this? I mean, it's kind of difficult for all of us to wrap our heads around. I could imagine as you're putting it out in front of you, it's kind of like that whiteboard moment where it's all piecing together.
Well,
Any of you want to comment?
Yeah, we also early on, we developed a confidential informant who was really well situated in these groups, who kind of came forward and gave us a lot of information that he didn't testify in court because all of it was what the law would call hearsay, but he came forward and connected the dots, so at least we knew where to look. In terms of developing actual proof, that was the real legwork. That was the tireless effort of everyone up here, the Buffalo detectives, ourselves, and having to meet these people face to face on their own terms and just try to convince them to come forward to tell the truth about what they had seen, what they had heard. That was helped a lot by the use of digital location evidence. So we had Google precision location records, we had phone records, we had Wi-Fi network records that Chris worked with the FBI in compiling and developing. So it sounds easy enough to say, but when you're out there trying to meet these people on their own terms and convince them to come forward, I mean, you can imagine the nature of the crime itself is going to make people very reluctant to ever be willing to come forward. And Sam was incredible. Sam was able to, Sam has a softer touch than maybe Chris or I do, and she was very, very effective at convincing folks to come forward.
So you mentioned the softer touch versus the more, I guess, harder touch. Is that important in a case like this where there's so much scattered information, so many people
Absolutely.
have different, I guess, specialties?
Absolutely. We could not, Sam was lucky enough to join on with us maybe about a year ago, and she was absolutely vital. At least three of our witnesses, who I won't name, but adult female witnesses who were super important to this case, would not have testified if it weren't for Sam's efforts.
Did they actually come away with money from either crime? Because based on what one of the defense attorneys was talking about, when we got removed from the pre-sentencing report, they thought there was money there. Did they actually come away with
We believe very strongly that they got money from Danielle Cartacci. It was hard to, you prepare your witnesses and you have these sessions. So with the two younger girls, they were able to articulate, Mom had a big amount of cash that she kept in a purse in her room, and the purse was still there and the cash was missing. We were not able to coax that out of them on the stand, which happens all the time. And it was a detail that would have been great, but ultimately wasn't necessary. The law on that, by the way, is we don't have to prove that the robbery was successful in order to make it a felony murder. We just have to prove that was the motivation and that was what was happening.
The courtroom was very emotional, to say the least. Is that surprising to you in a court case like this?
Not at all. I would say that's pretty typical for a lot of cases. This one was certainly a little bit more volatile, just because the sheer number of people, but also, the length of time it took to finally bring a resolution to this case. There was a lot of pent-up feeling. We always tell our families, while this is pending, every day is going to feel like day one. Every day is going to feel like the day you got the call you hope you never got. And then we tell them, hopefully today will feel like day two, and you can turn the corner and start the hard work of healing.
And are you confident in, obviously they were I know one of the defendants said he was definitely going to appeal, but are you confident that these convictions will stand through appeal?
Yes.
Can I ask another question? Earlier in the case, the prosecution, the other, one of the co-defendants, Cherie Bailey, was described as like a mastermind of what happened, but she took a plea to this robbery first. So can you explain kind of what happened?
Sure. So Cherie Bailey was a testifying witness for us. As we got closer to trial, she decided with her attorney that she wanted to tell us exactly what happened. And her testimony was critical. She agreed to come forward. We took statements from her ahead of time. We were able to corroborate other evidence that we knew to be true, and through her testimony. And she was a really important witness for us ultimately in the trial. We gave her a reduced plea for a couple of different reasons. Number one, she was not the shooter or a shooter. Number two, she did not go into the house on Merrimack. She got out of the car, but eventually she never went into the house. So she certainly participated, and she knew that there was going to be a robbery that was going to take place, but she wasn't in the house and she wasn't a shooter. And finally, and maybe most importantly, the family members of the victims on Merrimack agreed with the deal that we proposed, giving Cherie Bailey, because we wouldn't have done it without their approval. They are the ones whose loved one is gone, and she was an important witness to us because of the 4 people that were in the car at the time we made the agreement with her where she was going to be a witness for us. She was the only person that was involved in the robbery planning and that we knew of. Now, interestingly enough, within a couple of days or weeks of that, the detectives that were involved in this case found Marquise White. He was the 4th person in the vehicle that went to Merrimack, and they were all planning this robbery. And Marquise White eventually agreed to testify as well, and he was another very important witness for us. And for the same reasons, including the family agreeing to the way we resolved Marquise White, he agreed to testify, and he was the only person in the house besides the 2 men that were convicted that could tell us exactly what happened in the house. So he was another critical witness for us. It came together very late in this case because Marquise White was shot and injured very, very seriously, and we didn't even know he was able to testify. We thought he was still critically injured 4 years afterwards, and so it was very late in the prosecution of this case that we realized he was around and available, and ended up being a very critical witness for us.
He was shot in a separate incident?
Yes, about 8 days after the Merrimack homicides, there was an accident in South Buffalo that occurred on Hopkins, and in the motor vehicle at the time of the accident was Marquise White, Wayne Robbins, and Cherie Bailey. Ernest Green had just gotten out of the vehicle just before the accident took place, and just after Ernest Green had gotten out of the vehicle and the 3 people in the vehicle were shot up. They were shot by someone, and that's as much as we could get into at the trial because of a decision and a ruling by the judge. But Cherie Bailey was shot and injured, Marquise White was shot and seriously injured, and Wayne Robbins was not shot, he was not injured. But that was another critical point in the investigation that led to cell phones being recovered from that accident. And obviously, 3 of the 4 people that were at the Merrimack homicide were at the scene of that accident. So,
They
anything
were
else?
yelling, what I believe I heard from the gallery was, we'll get Cherie, we'll get Cherie. Is that something you're concerned about?
Cherie Bailey is incarcerated right now. She will be sentenced. I don't know if we have a sentencing date yet. June 4th. She will be sentenced by Judge Bowler for the crime that she pled guilty to. So she's going to be in jail for a long time. Other than that, I don't want to comment on what was said in the gallery.
Were there only family members of the victims in the gallery, or were there family members of the men who were convicted today as well?
There were family members from both sides. There were a lot of family from the victims, though. As I said earlier, there were probably 40 people in this room just a short while ago, and they were, most of them, if not all of them, were in the courtroom.
What does that say about the amount of lives touched from this crime?
I mean, there were obviously that's a lot of people that are affected by this, and I think not just the families of the victims, but the whole community was affected. Ebeling, Merrimack, all those neighborhoods were all. This was a very scary, unnerving, incident, and they happened literally a month apart from each other, and so it was. It affected the whole community, but obviously it affected the families, and the survivors, most seriously. So, any questions for any of the police officers?
I just wanted to add one thing, because there was one name that didn't get mentioned, and Mike was very important in this case. When we had completed our initial investigation, it was almost a purely circumstantial case, and Mike gave us every resource we could ask for, and really cleared the way and let us do what we had to get done. And so Mike deserves a lot of credit for, one, believing in the case and believing in us and letting us do what we needed to do.
Well, I appreciate that, but quite frankly, we're just doing our jobs, and I know that everybody feels the same way. This is a horrible case for these families, and the fact that we were able to, to successfully complete this investigation and prosecute the people responsible for these horrific crimes is what we all come to work for every day, and this is a satisfying day for all of us. So, thank you.
Thank you.